Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Burnt Coverage. I'm your host, Curtis.
And I'm Joel.
And we're here breaking down your Week 6 picks for quarterback. Wow, Week 6 picks. That should have been my vocal warm-up. Week 6 picks for quarterback this week in daily and weekly leagues such as FanDuel and DraftKings. We try to target some lower-end guys or maybe guys that are so obvious that you didn't even look at them. And Joel, do you have somebody in either of those categories?
Oh, yeah, I'll start off. I'm going to start off, going to go back to a homer. I've strayed away from the team for a couple weeks. I'm coming back home. I'm going Sam Bradford. So Monday Night Football, always an exciting venture. He's facing a New York Giants defense, allowing a league-worst 304 passing yards a game. He has 5 touchdown passes in the last 2 games. Vegas setting the over-under at 50 for this game, which means Boku points all around. So we're going to talk some trends now. This is the second straight season the Giants have won 3 in a row following an 0-2 start. Last year, after their 3 in a row, they went into Philly in Week 6, just like we are going into now, and proceeded to lose their next 7 games.
And what happened the other time that they went 0-2?
I only have last year's.
I think they won the Super Bowl.
They lost 7 in a row last year, starting in Week 6 in Philadelphia. We're in Week 6 in Philadelphia this week, so sorry, Eli. I look forward to the patented Eli shrug. Sam Bradford going for the deep cheap price of $6,000 on DraftKings and $7,700 on FanDuel. I think this is going to be a very high passing game. I don't think there's going to be a lot of running in this game. I think they're going to try. I don't think it's going to be very successful. New York tends to be a little better against the run than they do the pass. They can't defend anything through the air. So I think as much as Philly tries to establish the run game with the Matthews-Murray tandem, I think it's going to be Bradford and a couple other guys.
Yeah, it's actually surprising how well the Giants have been against the run this year. It might be a little fluky because it's still early. We'll see, but they are top 5 against the run. If I was gonna play a player in this game, and I love Monday night players, it would be Bradford and one of his tight ends, who we'll mention later, more than likely. Because he's spreading the ball around. We're seeing Josh Huff get touchdowns. We're seeing Miles Austin get touchdowns. Jordan Matthews is popular. So we're seeing a lot of guys. Brent Selleck. We're seeing a lot of guys in this game. So if I was compelled to play an Eagle this week at home, but there hasn't been a lot of consistency out of Bradford, and it worries me as a person I'm going to play in a money league.
Yeah, and I think I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think it's it's the rust factor. He's shaking off the rust. It's a completely new offensive system to him, and now that it's taken him out of his comfort level. Bradford likes operating under center, and Chip Kelly's offense typically operates out of the gun. But Chip Kelly is altering the offense, and you'll notice that they're not running at nearly the breakneck speed that they have in years past with Nick Foles of the world, and they're slowing it down. And that they're still quick, they're not just not as quick, and that's resulting in more success, as you can see in the drubbing of the New Orleans Saints last week.
Well, for me to play Bradford, it'd have to be a situation where I thought the Giants would get ahead early, which I don't think Joel is necessarily thinking.
No.
But I think it could be a scenario if I was going to argue myself to play Bradford. So maybe Joel is thinking Giants up big early.
No, I just think this is a throwing game. I think that Philly has established a run game the last 2 weeks, and so now I think the Giants are going to dare Bradford to beat them, and I think Bradford will beat them.
All right. Bold pick.
It's not that bold.
Eagles.
For first place.
Eagles dare.
For first place of the East.
It's going to be a fun game.
You know who doesn't win the East? The Cowboys.
Yeah, probably not at this point. I'm gonna pick a quarterback who actually has been good this year, and someone I pick quite frequently if you're a fan of the show, and that's Carson
The
Palmer,
official quarterback of burnt coverage.
or at least the side of the couch of burnt coverage. Carson Palmer this week is at Pittsburgh, and if you've been watching Pittsburgh games, they've been destroyed by quarterback play. Sorry, Nick Foles, except for you. Carson Palmer playing Pittsburgh 20th against the pass. And Palmer is leading the NFL in passing touchdowns. And a lot of these games, they've been way up. So even though they've been up, the defense is performing well, the running game is performing well. Chris Johnson's also one of the people tied for second in the running game, in rushing yards. Palmer is still getting his touchdowns. And he's sixth also in passing yards too. So Palmer is putting it up all across the board. We saw Phillip Rivers this past Monday throw for 365 and 2 touchdowns against the same Pittsburgh's defense. People are afraid that maybe Palmer is going to be limited by being up, and I could see that. Pittsburgh hasn't done well. They've even resorted to doing the Wildcat just because they don't have enough trust in Vic.
It works.
Yeah, it did work. I mean, they did score the touchdown on it, but really the play of the game for them was, and I think it's kind of lost in the shuffle, was the big pass to Marcus Wheaton, the bomb that they got him all the way downfield, or score the touchdown for him. But yeah, I think maybe people are going to be afraid that Palmer is going to be way up in this game, but they didn't pull Palmer until they had scored 40 points last week. I see against a team. Bruce Arians used to be the quarterbacks coach and offensive coach for Pittsburgh. So going back home, he's going to want to show what he's worth, put his team up against Pittsburgh. I see Palmer really throwing it. He's got all his weapons available. Malcolm Floyd's fully back. He hasn't performed, but he is fully back. He's also got Ellington, a strong run game. And Carson Palmer's only been sacked 7 times this year. 4 of them were against the Rams, so only 3 in his other games. I really look for Carson Palmer at only 6,600 in DraftKings and 8,000 in FanDuel to do a lot of damage this week.
Yeah, he's still a very underpriced quarterback, which is amazing. And they do just continue to throw it no matter what the score is. And they've had some pretty sizable leads throughout the season. And I think that has to do with, they have an adequate running game. I don't think it's a good running game at all, but I think it's been an adequate running game only because the passing game has been so successful.
But yeah, Chris Johnson, though, I mean...
But I think that has more to do with the success of Carson Palmer this year.
Granted,
than Chris Johnson being an amazing running back.
Yeah, it's not like Le'Veon Bell, who's just awesome and can do it with or without
exactly.
Ben. Like, Chris Johnson needs that good quarterback because he wasn't good before.
It's easy to run on a dime defense.
Yeah. If Sanchez is your quarterback, you're not going to run that well. So, sorry, I didn't mean that. That's an anti-Eagles thing. Because Sanchez isn't your quarterback.
He's not.
Your star, Sam Bradford, is your quarterback.
This year he is.
You have a non-Eagles quarterback to pick for us?
I do. Funny you should ask. I'm going to go Ryan Tannehill. I'm going to dig deep this week. So Ryan Tannehill, the Miami Dolphins are... They had a coaching change. They're coming off the bye. They've gotten rid of Joe Philbin. They've replaced him with Dan Campbell, their tight ends coach. And I really think that everybody came into the season expecting good things, big things from Miami. A promising young team with some new additions and the continued development of Tannehill. But the one thing that's been lacking in Tannehill's game, which added a big threat last year, was his running. That's been noticeably absent this year, and I think the one spark that Campbell will add, he said he's going to add some new wrinkles to the offense, and with the terrible running game of Lamar Miller, I really think that those new wrinkles are just implementing more called runs for Tannehill this week, and that will completely open up the passing game for the Jarvis Landrys of the world and the Jordan Camerons of the world. So he's averaging 270 yards a game, even in this terrible season thus far. 2 touchdowns in each of his last 3 games. So even with this terrible team, he still put up decent numbers. It's just if you can add a little bit of the rushing, I think that completely opens up and changes this Miami offense. Prices: $5,700 on DraftKings, $7,700 on the Duel.
Yeah, I came in and I was one of these people. Miami are going to sneak into a wild card.
Yeah.
Miami are an up-and-coming team, and it hasn't happened. And I think, as in years past with quarterbacks we've seen in fantasy, sometimes the best fantasy offense is a bad defense. And we're seeing it from Miami. What happened? You signed Sue. Cameron Wake's there. Like, you're supposed to have a pretty good defense, and everybody is killing you. So I can't say that that's going to change this week. So that just means that Tannehill's going to have to keep throwing. And I still don't have a lot of faith in Lamar Miller personally. If anything, I think, when I hear tight ends coach, I think who is a tight ends coach want to throw it to, they have a pretty good tight end in Jordan Cameron. And they're developing Devontae Parker.
Yeah.
They still have Jarvis Landry. Rashard Matthews has been a good player.
They
great
still
player
have
this
decent,
year.
good young weapons. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of Philbin wasn't able to get anything out of them.
Yeah, Stills. They have old Greg Jennings. I mean, they have a lot of guys that can do it. So yeah, I don't know.
And I think this early in the season, when you make a coaching change in the NFL, like that's almost throwing up the white flag. But I think that now the players realize that it's on them. Like, the owner's done his thing. He brought in a new regime. So I think it adds a new spark to the offense.
I actually think it's not just the opposite of throwing the white flag, but I think they bought their own hype. And they think that we actually are a good team, and something's wrong. So they, and I don't know if you've seen any interviews with their new coach, Dan Campbell.
No.
He's a really, really intense guy. Kind of reminds me of like a Mike Tomlin type. And look at any interview. It just seems like a guy, like a kind of coach that people are going to respect. Philbin came in with a great resume because he came from the Green Bay offense.
Yeah.
And maybe he rested on his own laurels. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. But there's been tons of problems with the incognito thing. And they've had a ton of personnel issues.
Leadership problems in the locker room.
So maybe this is the thing to do it.
I think it can only lead to good things. Like, it can't get. I don't think it can get any worse for Miami. I think it's only uphill. They play in a very tough division. That's the thing. And I think that, yes, everyone thought Miami was going to be the sleeper pick, but everyone was discounting Buffalo. Buffalo has I think, taken over the role that everyone thought.
Well, the Tyrod Taylor
Yeah,
thing.
Miami was
Nobody saw
sure.
it coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What do you got?
Well, I have no Tyrod Taylor. I have a
Buffalo doesn't even have a Tyrod Taylor.
well, they might. We'll see what happens. But I do have a journeyman retread quarterback that I just love to recommend to you to put a lot of money on this
Jameis
week.
Winston.
He's not a journeyman or a retread.
He is a retread.
And
he's a retread.
And James Winston's on bye, so I can't recommend any bucks this week. My retread is Brian Hoyer. Brian Hoyer of the Houston Texans. Now, not a sexy pick. I get it. You're like, why should I listen to you, Brian Hoyer? Well, here's why. First of all, 5,100 in DraftKings, which is only 100 more than the minimum, 6,700 in FanDuel. But consider this. In his last 4 quarters, Brian Hoyer has thrown for 544 yards and 3 touchdowns with 1 pick. And that 1 pick was the game ender last week when they were trying to come back and win. When he was inserted against the Falcons, granted, in a desperate situation, he threw the ball a lot and produced touchdowns. And last week, he was very, I would say, high quality once Mallett went down, and to keep that game competitive against the Colts. Jacksonville is his opponent this week, which we know isn't a great team. They've made strides, but they're still not in the good What? Because of the Jacksonville thing?
I mean, it's just refreshing to hear you pick against the Jaguars.
Yeah, and I am this week, surprisingly.
I know, that's what refreshing
it must mean something. Thank you. Jacksonville is 21st against the pass this year. And Brian Hoyer has 2 guys you might have heard of, DeAndre Hopkins and Arian Foster. Both of these guys will get 10 targets. It's just a given any week. They're both healthy. And with both of these guys getting 10 targets, there's going to be production because they're both fantastic athletes and players. DeAndre Hopkins has shown that he is a true number one. We see why they were so willing to get rid of.
Yeah, exactly. What's his name?
Yeah, exactly. Andre Johnson. Get rid of Andre Johnson. Foster is his first true week back with a full complement of touches. He had 20 touches. 30 touches. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of two of the best players in the game. And those are the only guys he really throws to. There was two fluky Jalen Strong touchdowns last week. They were the only two passes. One was a Hail Mary. One was one where the Colts just completely forgot to cover him. That's not necessarily going to happen every week. And we have Cecil Shorts and possibly coming back, so that will certainly help. Brian Hoyer, Nate Washington's still out, but he's sort of an iffy, maybe not non-factor, but not somebody that we're worried about here or there. And this should be a competitive game because I love Jacksonville. It is in Jacksonville. They have played all their competitive games except for the Patriots, and nobody's been competitive against the Patriots. And Brian Hoyer has taken control of this job against all odds. They really wanted Mallett to win it. He has the big arm. He's a touch younger. But he couldn't do it. Hoyer, every time he stepped in, has produced. He's was pretty good with the Browns. I know we're quick to forget. I mean, he had Josh Gordon. He took all the headlines. Brian Hoyer's pretty good there. So I like Brian Hoyer at a dirt cheap price this week against a not so great Jacksonville team.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that Brian Hoyer could look to DeAndre Hopkins even more than Mallett could, because I mean, even in the absence of Foster for the first 4 weeks. Hopkins was a target monster. You know, he was averaging 16 targets a game. And now you add Arian Foster into the mix, a healthy Arian Foster. It's dangerous. Mm-hmm. It's dangerous.
DeAndre Hopkins really, I think, maybe had the best game of the year last week for a receiver. I mean, we had the AJ Green 200-yard game, and Julio Jones certainly been phenomenal. But Hopkins really put that team on his back. I know they lost, but Foster was struggling out of the gate, rushing. He really saved his game and his fantasy game, at least, in receiving. But DeAndre Hopkins is a beast, and they really don't have anybody. I mean, who does? But they don't have anybody to cover him. So I think Hoyer's a pretty, at least safe floor play, if not high ceiling play. I mean, 302 touchdowns is not the question.
Yeah. Did either of us pick DeAndre Hopkins last week?
I think one of us did.
I think one of us did too.
And we talked about it beforehand. I said, you can have DeAndre Hopkins, and I'll talk about somebody else.
Is that on camera?
Now it is. All right, well, that was our quarterback segment this week.
And some wide receiver segments.
I'm Curtis.
And I'm Joel.
And we will see you next week.
On the couch.